Salvete omnes. This is Moss. This is AP Latin Video 1 Introduction. A little on comprehensible input, grammar, and the AP exam. I'm going to talk a little bit about comprehensible input. I know that we've talked about this a lot during class, but just a quick review in the context of what we're going to be doing in the videos, because it's quite different than what we've been doing in class. This is going to be a new experience for you in your Latin education. We focus most of the time on comprehensible input, and this is going to be on grammar and English translation in the AP, and that's what the purpose of these videos is for. So, comprehensible input, or CI. What are some main principles that I've used in teaching comprehensible input in class? These are the main principles. We have done a lot of sheltered vocabulary. What do I mean by sheltered vocabulary? I mean I've tried to limit the amount of vocabulary that you receive in class so that we can do really high repetition with that vocabulary, and your subconscious part of your brain, which is focusing on the meaning, has the time that it needs to pick up and acquire that vocabulary. At the same time, while we shelter, or we try to limit the amount of vocabulary that we're using, we try to not shelter the language that we're using. What I mean by this is that a lot of language learning approaches will teach you certain grammatical concepts in order. Say they'll teach you the present tense for 1 year, and then after they feel like you know the present tense well, then they'll introduce the past tense. Then they'll introduce the future tense. So what it does is it limits your ability to converse naturally in the language, because you're limiting the type of language that you use based on these concepts. So we don't do that in class. We try to use as many of the concepts simultaneously from the beginning as we can, and just trust that your subconscious is going to pick up the grammar that's in that language in usage through lots of repetition and through natural, meaningful conversation. And that comes to the last principle of comprehensible input, is that it's meaningful, it's compelling, it's contextual. Your subconscious part of your brain needs to be focused on the actual meaning of the language, not so much on vocabulary lists or grammatical rules or things like that. And if you do that, that's how you learned your first language, that's how you'll learn other languages most naturally, and with the least amount of effort and most efficiently. So that's comprehensible input. That's the way I teach. You know very well that this is how it is, because this is how we've learned for 3 years. We try to talk in Latin and enjoy ourselves in Latin as much as we can during class, and it makes it fun and it makes it enjoyable, and we don't have to do a lot of rote memorization and talk about grammatical rules. Now the AP exam is quite different, and that's why I've done these videos. These videos are going to accomplish outside of class what we don't do inside of class. Inside of class we do CI, or comprehensible input, and outside of class you're going to have more of a chance for the AP exam to focus on grammar and English translation, translating Latin into English, and then also on analyzing in English Latin passages and things like that, because that's what the AP exam is all about. So that brings us to the AP Latin exam itself and the purpose of these videos. The AP exam is very focused, as I said already, on grammar concepts in Latin and on English translation, translating Latin into English. This is how it's been in college Latin programs for a long time, also in high school Latin programs for the most part. Not as many are concerned with comprehensible input type learning. Many are concerned with the translation of classical texts into English, and knowing a lot of grammar about it, because usually that helps you understand what's going on in the classical texts, because they are more difficult. And that brings us to the other element about the AP, is that it focuses on Virgil's Aeneid, passages from it, and also on Caesar's. And these passages are difficult. They are difficult for me, and I've been learning and acquiring Latin for a lot longer than you guys have had a chance to do. So I speak for myself in saying that they are difficult. But this has been what Latin programs for a long time have been very concerned about students learning. There has been a focus on classical texts, particularly from Rome's Golden Age, and particularly on poetry and oration and Caesar and all of these pillars of Latin literature. And there's nothing wrong with it, but the texts are difficult. This has been the case since about the Reformation or so. Before that time, Latin was used a lot in all kinds of disciplines and also in the church, and so Latin had some different purposes then. From the Reformation on, at least in Western culture outside of the church, there's been more of a focus on classical texts because there was a great revival of classical learning in the Renaissance, and so that's just how history has been for Latin learning since that time. So let's take a look at the AP exam itself and the things that the AP exam is concerned about. So what does the AP exam test? Well, like I said, it tests literal translation into English. This is one way that the graders of the exam can know that you understand Latin sentences, the vocabulary, the meaning, the grammatical constructions, and all this. So it's one way of testing it. I use it as a way of testing it. I have you translate occasionally, and I use it in class orally. I'll say, what does that mean? And if you tell me in English, then I know if you understand Latin. So that's a concern of the AP exam. Another concern of the AP exam is that you have the ability to analyze in English Latin passages. So they're going to give you Latin passages from Caesar or from Virgil. They're going to ask you to make an argument. They're going to pose a question. And then you're going to use the text as your support to prove a thesis, but you're going to be doing that thesis in English and then quoting Latin and paraphrasing it or translating it to show you that you know what it means. The AP exam is also concerned that you understand a lot of the grammatical features of the Latin language and the relationships between words, how things agree in their gender and number, and what tense things are, and all these kinds of things, because this is, again, a big concern of college programs, and that's a very big driving factor in what determines what's on the AP, and so that's why it's there. Finally, the AP is concerned that you understand a lot of the historical and cultural background to Caesar and Virgil, to the AP texts. So finally, why have I chosen videos as a way of doing this? Well, I'm choosing videos because we do CI in class, but I want you to be able to do this outside of class. It's not interesting to everybody to have a discussion of grammar, a lengthy discussion of grammar especially, and translating these texts into English in class. And it's more interesting for the whole class to do more comprehensible input, and I think it helps your Latin as well to do a lot of comprehensible input. So these are in video format, so you can have a structured approach to understanding the ins and outs of Latin grammar at home, and that you can have them in a video form so that you can reference them anytime. So the first portion of videos are grammar videos dealing specifically with the basics of Latin grammar. We'll look at how nouns and verbs in Latin behave, and sentence structure and syntax and things like that are going to be relevant for the AP exam, and they're going to help you out as we go through the next part of the videos, which deal with actually translating these texts into English. Finally, I like doing videos because you can have them at any time, you can pause them and go back, and so it's a big time saver for me and for you. Once I've made them, they're there always for you to access. So without any further ado, let's get right into it. And here is a little special picture for you from my trip to Rome in 2006. And I'm standing in the Vatican next to the Laocoon group, the prophet who told the Trojans not to bring the horse into Troy. And look what happened to him. He was eaten by the snakes with fiery eyes and vibrating tongues, and that's me there with my fiery eyes and vibrating tongues. So now that you're sufficiently creeped out, let's get started. Incipiamus!